That's where I think the problem is with this, with the Revit, is that it's been a CAD file that's, you're trying to copy too much of a CAD file and it's a different system. Just delete the stairs. We made them a 150 anyway. You adjust your topography so you won't need them.
Yeah, that's true.
Same as the front stairs, you won't need them either. Once you've got your topography in and to the right
True.
spot.
And you won't need a rail either.
No, it's just there for looks. It should end up looking like that.
So why is there a thick line there?
Yeah, you're going to get a lot of wires that there. Yeah, you'll end up with it looking kind of like that. It's sort of like that.
Yeah. So
Just
how did you
put a
do
building pad underneath it.
for your veranda? How did you do that? Is that just a cladding over the top of your steel? Like you just got stumps for your side porch, I should say.
I've got. I'm in consult with my client at the moment. I'm trying to convince him to do a bond deck, suspended living slab
and look,
there.
and if you don't mind me speaking to that in the class,
Yeah, that's
as
all right.
well, talking about that as well. All right.
My poor client's got a lot of emails this weekend.
I was lucky your client had most of the weekend
Yeah,
off.
there you
So,
go.
yeah. So if we can keep to the program of doing the council consult today, that's cool. But if we can't, that's all right as well, because we can fit it in at another time. So far, in regards to council, what we've been talking about is how to be compliant, and it's all about be compliant, because you want to save your client time, and that's a very noble pursuit, and that's how you should always start things out. The managing of clients, it's about bringing their ideas to a point which is realistic and achievable, but then also bringing the council to a point at which your client is kept happy, and it's about managing those two aspects. So what we've covered so far is about trying to get the client to a point of going, look, there is all this overriding stuff that we don't have control over, that if you can get your ideas and your expectations within that, then we're going to have smooth sailing. Now, sometimes your client's going to go, well, that's all well and good. Should we try to do some non-compliant stuff? How do we work with that? And with working with councils, there is some flexibility. And you probably would have noticed that in looking at the development plans, you've got statements which seem to be contradictory, and also particularly broad statements throughout your planning documents. So we might have something like, the intention in the council-wide objectives, and this is mostly where you find it, by the way, is in council-wide objectives. Once you get into the actual zone, then they start honing things in a little bit more. But you have statements like the character of a streetscape must be, or should be maintained by a uniform setback of dwellings. And we look at that and we go, okay, well, we've got to draw this line across the front of all these dwellings in plan view and cite our dwelling there. But the key things to pick out from statements like that is it says it should, and you can pick up from these broader statements or not so clearly defined statements that they are what council would like, but you'll match that with a statement that it says with development, retaining walls should be minimised or should be avoided, and then you've got other statements that say building should happen in a manner that protects buildings from bushfire. The council wants to maintain amenity through the retention of existing trees, for example, and you've got these things, and you think, okay, if we put a building here, then we have to lose those trees. If we put it in line with these houses, we have to lose those trees. Or if we put it back here, we can retain a tree, but then we have to use a retaining wall. They said they don't like retaining walls. Then if we avoid all of that and we put it here, sticking out over here, then it's not very safe in a bushfire context. So it's about matching all of these things. And that's where you, as a designer, can go and have a discussion with the council and say, look, we see that these are your objectives, these are your objectives, these are your objectives. Now, with our building setback, we've tried to maintain that to the best we can, but we're balancing that against this other statement within your planning document that says this, or we're trying to do it with this. And you can keep your client's best interests at heart, so you think, okay, this is what the client wants, right? And I'm going to push for these things over top of some other things. So it's about keeping your client's interests at heart and going, look, yeah, the client doesn't want to spend money on retaining walls. The client doesn't want to chop down trees. The client's happy with the house being closer to the road. So you advocate for that. So it's about, so first of all, your initial role is you advocate essentially for the council to your client to get them to a point to make something achievable and easy to get through. But then you advocate for your client to the council to get stuff to happen to make them happy. That's at the point that we're at. And part of that is to go through the objectives and look at the wording of things and go, okay, well that's ambiguous, that's ambiguous. Another thing to do in that regard is, yes, you can look at setbacks of other buildings, and if that little bit doesn't help your case very well, look further. And also, in regards to things like materials, fences, the design of dwellings, you can also, and you've got to be aware of this, there's sort of two parts to it. You can go and look for precedents that match what you're trying to achieve. And so you can say, look, yes, we see that these are your objectives, we can see that this is what you're wanting to achieve within this council area, but we can see that this has been done here. Find things that are the same as what you're doing. Say, this has been done here, this has been done here, this has been done here. If we do the same thing, we are meeting that the homogeneity of that, or we're keeping within character of existing construction. Yes, it doesn't exactly fit into your desire, that desired state, but it does meet the fitting in with the character and the current built form of the neighbourhood. So certainly for this subject, we can't expect you to go up there, take a drive around and look at all these things, but you can use Google Earth.
Is that where you would, obviously the front facade of the building, it says it needs to be predominantly stone or rendered. Is that what you'd say to the council? Listen, we want to use the weatherboard?
Yeah, exactly. So, and so you have go and Google Maps, Google Earth, Street View, whatever. Go around and look. Okay, there are other weatherboard dwellings there. Is there something else? Is there something that's part of even the historic character of Shepherd's Hill Road there that has some weatherboards on it? Are we matching in with that? So because they say I can't remember the wording they use
predominantly.
For it, but predominantly, yes.
And that's your wiggle room.
Yeah, exactly. Predominantly, right? It means, it's not a cut or dry.
Yeah.
However, in zoning documents you do find cut and dry. Cut and dry typically happens in tables. So we have tables drawn up where it says allotment frontages within this zone should be this. Dwellings should occupy no more than this percentage. A building should have a footprint of no larger than this, etc., etc., etc. They are your cut and dry, and it's about identifying what's cut and dry, what is malleable, what is an intent or a desire. Another thing that you brought up, which is really good in regards to the brush fences and the building with fireproof materials, you've identified that the genesis of of that fact sheet saying you can't build within 3 metres of a brush fence comes from the National Construction Code in relation to a fire source feature. So building, within a certain distance of a fire source feature, and you identify that's where it is. That's also something that you can bring up with the council now. You could, certainly on that, you would not expect an answer from somebody at council straight away. And typically that's what you're also going to get. Sometimes you get answers about things in discussion and on the phone. Almost always they'll want you to produce it again in writing, send it to them so that you have the discussion and they say, okay, well that's great and I feel comfortable with that. Can you put that to me in writing? And then they'll respond to you in writing because they want documentation of that. But they'll also want to have time to consider those things thoroughly. They won't want to be put on the spot.
You can't possibly know everything, can you?
No.
You've got to have time to research it.
Exactly, yeah. And you're going to be speaking to a duty planner who has a boss. And and some of these aspects they might think, oh look, I've got plenty of precedents for that, I feel comfortable about making those decisions. Other things they're not. And so they're going to want to have a think about it. They can give you some indication of things. I have had discussions with council before about stuff, and I've said, look, I don't want to do this because of this. And they've said, well, I feel comfortable with that. Can you put that to me in writing? And so you already get that idea. Yes, we can do it, right? And you work ahead on that assumption. You get it to them in writing. You get it back from them in writing to say that's fine, or you submit the application without getting any back from them. But you have put that stuff to them in writing, then you submit your application. So I just wanted to make that point. You can't expect answers on some stuff. Sometimes you'll get statements that make you think, I think they're agreeable with this or amenable to that, but then other times you'll get no idea of it.
Even with the water tanks, I rang them the other day about water tanks. And I also rang the CFS because the section, the minister's thing, 78, when you read through that, it actually says that they have to have 2,000 litres except when they're less than 500 metres from a high zone. Well, the high zone is straight across the road, so it's less than 500 metres away. So what does that mean? Do they have to have the 22,000 gallons?
Is that high? Yeah, is it high across the road there? Is
high
it?
Across the road.
Yeah, right.
So I rang them about that, and the lady goes, no, if you're in the median, you have to have the 2,000.
Yeah.
I said, well, what does that line then mean?
Yeah.
Except if they're, and she couldn't answer that question.
Yeah, and and that feeds to also. Okay, so you guys, so that's what the council consult is about, and I'll answer that I'll get to that as well. I'll just try to tidy up this because that segues well into what else we need to talk about. So with the council consult, basically, what you'll be faced with is a client that says, no, we want to build a 1800 high fence, and I want to do it in red. That's what you're trying to push with council. If you can.
Good luck.
But that's the task that you're given. There's that 1800 high and red, and then any other aspects of your dwelling which you think, look, I don't, there's a mismatch between what we want to do and what the council are saying. So it's your opportunity to have a crack at the council to change some of that, or get some malleability, or get some indication that they're fine, that you can just put in your application and it won't go to non-compliant. So that's what we're going to do with council. In regards to fire safety stuff, and there's a lot in this subject about fire safety stuff, and so there should be. It is a very important aspect of building design, which has become far more important particularly since the Black Saturday fires. So that really ramped things up, because there was a lot of damage, a lot of death that happened there in that situation. But we continue to have fairly catastrophic fire events, and it's something that we really need to consider well. That being said, so AS 3959 was written in 2009, before those fires, but after that fire, you probably noticed there's been a flurry of amendments to that Australian standard. For anybody who's tried to comb through that Australian standard, you'll notice, so it's about 120 pages initially, but then there's about 60 pages of amendments to that Australian standard. Also a bit of a quirk on getting access to that Australian standard. They have produced a document which is the fully amended document, but we can't get that for free through the TAFE website. Or the TAFE link, you have to buy that one. The only one we can get is the original, the 2009, and then the 3 amendments, and you go through and you look for any of those changes. But that being the case, and because there has been quite a lot of hurried updating in regards to all of this, you have statements exactly like, and now that's not AS 3959, that's the Minister's Code you're referring to. But you have statements in there that says, this, but then you have what the CFS will accept, etc. And all that stuff is not very well known. Like what the CFS will and won't accept isn't really very well known. And so there is a lot of ambiguity in this space. That's unfortunate. There should not be ambiguity with legislation, but there is, because there are things that conflicting statements and a whole lot of patching to pull things together. Now, I think over time all these things will be resolved, and there will be amendments to things to make things fit to what works and what's practical. So watch that, but also be aware that AS 3959 is quite difficult to navigate. What you identified, so over the weekend, Ryan sent me, as part of an email, actually it wasn't this particular table, but it was basically the same as that. Bring it up a bit larger. So, as far as I can tell, should I make that even larger? You can't quite see it. So, there are several different copies of this table getting about, which is a summary of requirements for building within AS 3959 for your various bushfire attack levels. So we've got our bushfire attack levels here. So low, 12.5, 19, 29, 40, and flame zone. And then it's separated down here, all your specific elements. So certainly it's a really handy table, because if anybody has read AS 3959, it is actually a very difficult document to navigate, because you've got, for example, they will say subfloors. You need to do this, unless you do this. And if you do that, then you can do this and this and this, according to that table, which is an appendice, or according to this piece, which is referenced further up here. That might be just for working out the stumps and stuff. It is fragmented around the place so much, and then it also builds up. We've got, BAL knows, low, no special construction requirements. That's all fairly simple. Get to 12.5. We've got some bits, right? You have to do, 4 mil grade A safety glass can be used in place of 5 mil glass, so for glass within 400 millimetres of the ground, etc. So you start getting some things happening. Now, so that tells us what we can do in BAL 12.5, and then 19 builds on top of that, and then 29 builds on top of that once again. And as you get further up, the requirements stack on top of each other, and it can be hard to determine exactly what you need to do, because the document references itself between the different bushfire attack levels. So, having said that it is a fairly difficult document to navigate, and it is a bit ambiguous and spread out all over the place, a table like this is a super handy thing because it simplifies everything. It pulls it all together. But the risk in using a table like this is, well, well, it's got Department of Justice here as the author for that, but not actually being connected to the author of that. It can be hard to know how thorough that has been pulled together, and any resource how reliable that is. There's some ambiguity around that. Now you can get information from your private certifier about what you need to do, and that's probably really good information, because if your private certifier gives you information about that, and you're going through that private certifier, well then they are liable for any of those things that have been incorrect, and that's a good source for that. So you can rely on that, and you push ahead with it. But but back to this. I've sourced, so there's a document that was put out by the Victorian government in regards to building in bushfire-prone areas. They have exactly this same table within that, and that may actually be the genesis of this particular table that was produced by the State Government of Victoria for their report in regards to building, or their publication in regards to building bushfire-prone areas, and it's compliant as at the date of publication. And that's very reliable for as at that date. Because it is so difficult to navigate, I don't mind you guys using these tables to get answers on these things, and I can see that in a lot of the responses from previous students in this subject, they've used bits here like this, which have been okay. And also this table is, in comparing this with reading through AS 3959, it seems to be quite conservative. So apart from that thing of, you can't necessarily thoroughly rely on it, in the main it appears quite conservative. But what we can also do though, possibly in consultation with our private certifier, but also for your own personal development, if you wish, is question some of the things in here, or understand what each of those refer to. I don't actually have AS 3959 up here to show you, but in regards to verandas and decks, it says here, we've got in this table, it says enclosed subfloor space, no special requirements for materials except within 400 millimetres of the ground. And right, if you don't mind, I'm sort of referring to what you've highlighted. So in Ryan's email, what he highlighted is that, well, we are within 400 millimetres of the ground. You didn't say anything about enclosing it or whatnot, but you said about that 400 millimetres of the ground. So what this is telling me, it says if it's an enclosed subfloor space, then there are no special requirements for those materials. And you can look at that initially and you go, oh well then let's not make it 400 millimetres from ground, let's make it higher, or let's enclose it all, or let's make it out of concrete, something that's not going to burn. But how you can really help, or how you may be able to help your client out in this regard, is going, okay, well, if it is within 400 millimetres of the ground, and if you don't enclose it, what are our special requirements for materials? If we go into AS 3959, what it says is you need to select timbers from table F, bushfire resisting timbers. And they're not actually all, yes, they're more expensive, right? They're a little bit more expensive than, so getting Mabau or something like that, from rainforest in Indonesia. So you've got to use some of your far denser timbers, black butt, turpentine, that sort of thing. But for an extra couple bucks per lineal metre, you can achieve what your client wants by going in there and questioning exactly what it says in AS 3959 and going, how can we achieve that as well? So I'm happy to accept both answers. You can go, yep, we'll just enclose it, and that's fine. We'll build it out of concrete. That's also fine. Or we'll make sure it's not 400 millimeters off the ground, or it's further than 400 millimeters off the ground. That's also fine. But be aware of that you don't always have to be so conservative, and that you can go in there, pull apart the Australian standard, and work out exactly what are those requirements for special materials also. And same sort of thing in glazing. It's a little bit easier in here. So looking at external windows. Yes, you might go, no, let's not have any windows right along that bottom there. Let's make sure they're all at least 400 millimeters off the ground, so we don't have to go worrying about special requirements for glass. But if that's an important feature for your client, you can go back into AS 3959, or it's also fairly easily shown in this, is that that for your windows in 12.5, that 4mm grade A safety glass can be used in place of 5mm toughened glass. 4mm grade A safety glass, that might actually be an affordable option for your client. So there are those two possibilities. Yes, you can be conservative and you can be very safe, or you can explore those things a little bit more to get the best for your client, if that's what your client wants. So I'm happy with both approaches.
Can you explain the external doors there? Does that mean the slab has to be 400 mil off the ground?
So as per except that door framing can be naturally fire resistant, high density timber.
It's more than the BA
19. So protected by bushfire shutter or screened with steel, bronze, or aluminium mesh.
You need a screen door.
So we need a screen door on the outside. So one of the options. So this is giving you options. So you can protected by bushfire shutter, or screened with steel, bronze, or aluminium mesh, or glazed with 5mm toughened glass. So we've got those options. And then non-combustible 35mm solid timber for 400mm above threshold. So non-combustible timber at the bottom, or toughened glass, or screened, or bush. And so you look through here and go, well, actually, 35mm solid timber for 400mm above threshold, made of bushfire resisting timber, that might not be so onerous. That might, or if we did want that glass there, just the door made of the bushfire resisting timber, and then the 5mm toughened glass in the door is also fine, because if you've got glass that's right down here, you probably want to make that toughened glass anyhow for kids.
I think there's a rule, isn't it? Yeah. It's, I think it might be 400 or 300mm within the ground. It has to be at least 6 mil. I know this because one of my kids smashed the window the other day.
Right.
and they said, it's going to cost you a bit more because it's lower to the ground.
That's right, I haven't went through the window with my son.
Yeah. It was my fault. I cracked shits.
And so yes, if you take a very quick cursory look, you can go, protected by bushfire shutters. This is crazy town. But then look through it, pull it apart, realise actually there are some options in there which don't deviate very far from the normal.
So always look at the ore. Look for the ore. Yeah,
and also so there's aspects about how high a building needs to be off the ground. So give that 450mm clearance, but it says on sloping sites 450 graded to minimum of 150. That's exactly the same as it is within the National Construction Code for elevated floors anyhow. So there are these that it is, you know, the aspects in here you think, oh, that might be onerous or controlling, but they actually reflect what's just happening in the National Construction Code anyhow. But also read it as an or. And certainly these tables are very, very good reference for simplifying it all, because they, I think within AS 759 they probably should have a table like this as well, that actually simplifies it all and makes the document far easier to read. But then, various different consultants, government agencies have produced this stuff as well. But you can certainly help apply it out in some regards, if you wish, by pulling apart that Australian standard as well.
Is private open space something you could talk to the council about? Not just the gradient. Because there's nowhere on this. If you put the house where it is, your gradient's wrong everywhere on the site.
Yeah.
Because it's 1 in 8. So would you be able to, like, say, this is probably 1 in 2, 4, 6, 8, 1 in 12?
Mm-hmm.
Would that be an issue, or? Because you
I
also got to
can't-
put your rainwater tank down here somewhere as well.
Yeah. Now, I can't think within, I don't know whether within the council requirements, whether it says there are any gradient restrictions
Yeah,
for
there
private
is,
open
does.
space. There are.
Yeah, one.
Right, so it's
1 metre for every 8 metres of gradient.
so private open space can't be steep gradient
Yeah,
land.
yeah, and it's got to be 8 by 10 metres. So, and if you try to put that anywhere on this block, you end up way out of that gradient.
Yeah. I think that's something that you can negotiate.
Yeah, it's not overly like, it's not like you're talking, this one drops, say, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, say 1,400 over that 8 metres.
Yeah.
So it's not an
Yeah.
What about
awful
this
lot.
area right here though?
It's got to be 8 by 10 metres. So every one of them, so
Yeah.
you put that there, you got
That's only 200, they're only
2,
200
4,
increments.
6, 8, yeah, that's what I'm...
So the way that I'd approach that with the council is to say, yes, we are achieving significantly more.
2,
Yeah.
4, 6, 8, 10, 12.
Yeah,
Well, it's
so
the same
that's
sort of gradient.
Yeah. Just go under.
Yeah.
Just go under.
So, yeah, I was just reading that then, so I was just thinking like, yeah, because you also need to have, there should be a carport up here. So where would you put it? You have to retain this block. You have to go to the council and ask to retain it.
And so all of a sudden you're at that point of going, do we want to push for retaining walls with the council, or do we want to push for no retaining walls and some easing on the private open space? Because they're two aspects that are both in their desired character or constraints around utilisation that conflict with each other, and that also conflicts with the location of the building. So we could actually put, the building sits there very well because it makes use of that flat portion of land, minimises retaining walls, but then also it works well in a solar aspect sense, so for energy efficiency, and that's another thing that's mentioned within the council-wide objectives, is development that makes use of solar access and promotes energy efficiency in dwellings. And so you can say, look, we're achieving that aspect of your thing. What that means is that we're slightly overstepping your slope requirements for the private open space.
Yep.
Well,
Don't you set back here?
Mm-hmm.
Does that encumber your private open space?
Well, no, it doesn't. So that can be private open space there as well.
Oh, okay. So that's, as long as you don't build anything on it, kids are alright to play cricket there.
Yeah,
all right.
Exactly.
Well, that should work then.
Yeah,
No worries.
yes, because the intention of the easements are that there's access for repairing services.
Yeah, that should work fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's perfect.
All right. Also, don't even need to push that one to the council. But if you were to, that's how you would approach it, and say, this is what we're doing. This is why.
That's good.
Yeah. Okay. Also, another thing to discuss today. So, you guys have to think about whether you want to do the council consult today as well.
Yeah, I'll have a go.
You'll have a go.
Yeah.
Mary, you.
These plans are just like driving me nuts.
Yeah. Succumb to peer pressure. Look, no, I won't press you for an answer on that. First, okay. So the next thing, while we're talking about plans driving us nuts, go back into here. Now, is everybody fine with what I've said in regards to the council and that concept? And do you have any questions in regards to that? Further. No. And no questions specifically in regards to the fire safety. Oh, there was one other thing that Mary, you identified with. You talked about tanks, etc. Now, this is not so much something in this subject, but something I know a little bit about. And we've done tanks in the Mitcham area before, like this, for this particular reason. So they do specify that you have a certain amount of, and depending on the allotment size, a certain amount of retention. So we have to retain some water, we have to retain water for CFS, etc. And then they have a certain requirement for detention. That doesn't have to be a separate tank. You don't have to have, one tank for retaining, one tank for use in the dwelling, one tank for detention. Simply what you do is, so this is your tank.
Just have your outlet at a certain height.
Yeah, so it's about setting outlets. So we'll set an outlet here, for example, with the little water restricting nozzle. So we just use a 1 inch outlet here, and then the water restricting nozzle that slows the outlet of this. So we'll have 10,000 litres or so or less than that, 5,000 litres of water detained, and typically you're going to have a pretty crazy and well sustained rainfall event to exceed that with a standard roof. So this fills up with water in your rainfall event, and then it flows out there over time, so over a couple of hours or so. Then you have your outlet here for general use. So that's going, because you've got requirements of, you've got to retain this amount of water for use on toilets, etc. So that's your retained bit for general use, and then CFS outlet right at the base. So this bit you can't touch. Only CFS can touch that bit.
There's three, actually, the council wants three, because they say the amount, plus, so there's the retention, there's the detention, and there's another retention, an additional retention.
Yeah.
So how do you do that?
Well, so both.
You just say, well, let's just add the 1,000 to the original amount.
Yeah. So in this scenario, we've got two sections which are both detention. So that's retention. So we've got two bits which are both retained. So they're retained for two separate uses, and that's simply divided up by your outlets. So if council says you need to retain a certain amount of water for both toilets and then for using on gardens, so they say you have to retain this amount for using gardens, you have to retain this amount for using on toilets. You can use that outlet for toilets and garden, or if you want, you can go, all right, use that one for garden, that one for toilets, garden, toilets. But the thing is then that if you get down to here, well, then you've got no garden mind as well. Just use this one for both of those aspects and say, yes, we satisfy we are retaining enough water to meet both of those requirements. And then how you use it, how you split it up, that's up to you. Does that answer your question?
The top one you've got, is that just your overflow outlet?
So that's detention.
Yeah, but why haven't you drawn it at the top of the tank?
Because what we're getting rid of is this amount of water. So what we'll have, so we'll have an overflow here, and you'll have to have that.
Yep.
in this scenario, that should never get used. It'll get used if something goes wrong with that little diaphragm in there. But if nothing goes wrong with that little diaphragm, and climate change doesn't happen to the extent that we just get mad ass downpours like we've never seen before, that overflow should never, that won't come into effect. Yes, you've got to have it there in case something goes wrong. But we have water coming in here when it rains, and it fills this up like that, and then a day later it stopped raining, and then the level of that drops back down to the bottom of that outlet, and that's what the detention is for. So that's why we have it partway down the tank. So we have it, requirements for detention of 5,000 litres. We have it set 5,000 litres beneath the level, the underside of the overflow.
I've never seen that before.
Yeah, well, it's something that is fairly new, and we don't do it very often at all because, typically,
The tank's made so they've actually got places to put these valves.
Well, so with the tanks that I do, we can put valves anywhere. So it's about, so you either put it, in that part of the flute or that part of the flute. You've got to be in the middle of the flute somewhere, either the crest or the valley. And you've got corrugated washers and just flip them around for, which side of the flute you're going into. So yes, you're restricted, so you can't really put one exactly there. So if 5,000 litres is right there, you go, okay, well, let's make it a bit bigger, drop it down to 5,500 litres, etc. That's the ones we do. Because you've got so many different tank manufacturers and different profiles of your tanks, not all of them can go doing that. Your poly tanks typically have a flat section there that you put your outlets in, so you don't need a corrugated washer. You just have two flat rubber washers, and that goes there. They don't have flat sections built into bits. So I guess you'd only be doing that with your corrugated profile tanks and using corrugated washers with outlets. But that's also fairly standard sort of kit to buy as well.
Integrity.
With some tanks, some tanks it might. I can't comment on who's doing what and what structural integrity.
Do they have to have a certain size pump? To pump the water out of it, or is it just gravity flow?
Oh, for CFS?
Yeah.
It's just flow.
Okay, so in that case, does a pool, if you've got a pool,
yes,
does that count as...
It does.
Yeah?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, you can use a pool.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah,
Actually says that,
Yes, you can use it. You can use a swimming pool. You can use a dam.
Yeah.
And CFS, CFS got their filter baskets. They put the suction hose on, and goes straight into the dam, so they're not sucking up pipe yabbies.
So the valve that you've got, that is a slow release valve, so to speak, where does that water go to? Is that just dumped on the site somewhere, or?
That goes to ideally that goes to the street.
Okay.
So same as so it goes wherever your overflow is going. Now in our scenario there at Shepherd's Hill Road, it's something that I couldn't confirm, but it appears there's no issue with sending water down the back there, because what we've got in that reserve, we've got a creek in there, we've got a water course in there. All of the topography heads towards that water course. If I was putting a decent amount of overflow water, I'd be very confident putting lots of overflow water through that block, and it would not go on anybody else's property, because that's what council are concerned about. Is any activity you're doing, it results in stormwater. They don't want that affecting anybody else. It goes into that reserve, and direct behind the building is reserve. It goes into that creek. That creek then becomes part of the backs of various properties as those allotments further down get larger. But by that stage, it's already a creek, and there's a lot of catchment into it anyhow. So, that might be something you want to chat to council about. But I can't see any reason why you wouldn't have overflow water going straight into that. So you can send it straight to the street. You know that. That's fine. That's all safe. Or if your tank's right down the bottom, it appears there should be an issue with that as well. Yeah. But yeah, with those and those CFS fittings, it just has to be 50 mil outlet and a Storz fitting on the end of it, which is two flat plates with these little bayonet bits put together like that. And yeah, so in regards to structural integrity, yeah, I guess in poly tanks and things like that have those flat plates, yeah, you probably wouldn't want to go cutting in there. You'd want to either if somebody's installing a tank for you, it's up to them whether they cut into it or not, and where the liability if it pops, or the manufacturer. But yeah, maybe don't do that yourself.
Pressure's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
It is,
yeah.
Especially when you're dealing with concrete and stuff. It's incredible the amount of pressure is at the bottom of a little wall.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Shoot out. You wouldn't believe.
Yeah. And when some of the tanks would build 350,000 litres with it's getting 2.9 metres head pressure. There's a lot of that's a lot of pressure.
There's a lot of water coming out real fast.
Yeah, if something's not together well. Right. So I'll pause that recording. Is back to our procedure document again. And we can spend as much time on discussing this as you wish as well. But if you want to, if this is all fine for you, we'll go through it very quickly. So cover sheet, that probably no surprises there. So 3D views of premises. Now you've identified all the issues with the Revit files, etc. If your 3D views are not amazing, I certainly accept that. Client's name, contact details, there should be no issues. That project title, site address, once again no issues. Student details, no issues. Sheet schedule, well then you do that last. There should be no issues with that. Site analysis plan. Can anybody suggest what sort of scale I'd be looking at for a site analysis plan?
1 to 200.
1 to
1 to 200 to get the whole site.
Yeah. 1 to 200 is what? So we have to draw a distinction between the site analysis plan and the site plan. So two separate things. What we've got mentioned on here with the site analysis plan is neighbouring structures. So that's dwellings that are adjacent. But as we said before, talking about setbacks, etc., and you might want to be pushing a case with council. If there are some buildings not on the neighbouring allotments, but a couple up that are further forward that give you even greater flexibility, or some on an angle doing what you want to be doing, I'd suggest including those in your site analysis plan. With what it says on the council's information, or typically, I think it says on Mitcham, but typically this is a very normal thing, is that they'll say area plans and site analysis plans at 1:1,000 or 1:500. 1:500 will enable you to get your two neighbouring blocks in there. 1:1,000 will get sort of 3 or 4 blocks either way. Once you get into 1:1,000 on an A3 sheet, everything starts getting very tiny. It may not be all that relevant to you. You might want to start to go to like A1 or A0 sheets for that sort of stuff. We're not going to be doing that for residential development typically. So you only do that if you're having to push a point. But council identify that as something that's possible. So 1:1,000 or 1:500. But yeah, I'd certainly be looking at 1:500 for that. Services, that should be fairly easy to find and to get on there. Vegetation, once again, look, and I don't know about the limits of Revit in that regard. Is that something that's pretty easy on a plan view? If you do a broader plan, just grab trees and drop them around the place.
You just add components.
Yeah.
But
So
just
that's-
remember that when you do add a heap of trees, when you go to your 3D view, because they're the sort of image they are, it does slow it down a bit.
Right.
So maybe put your trees in last,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
or put them in and hide them away. Otherwise, it doesn't. It becomes a bit of a problem.
So you just said in that regard, with the plans that we currently have, it doesn't really show the big trees that are in the front of the property.
Yeah. Yeah. And that I think goes to our thing of it being a mash of real life and tailored eye.
Because that's an important part of the plan, is
Yes.
those very large trees on the front of the fence.
That's them there.
Yeah.
They just
They're
haven't
just
labelled them.
way undersized though, they're
Yeah.
big trees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's
So
what
the
that's.
shadowing that they're gonna create is way different from what's showing right
Yeah.
now.
Because you've got your road, your Stony pole, and these things. I was wondering
Yeah,
what they
so-
were, but they've
so-
never been labelled. But that'd be those two trees, and that'd
Yeah.
be a tree. And I've got no idea
Yeah,
what
look,
it is.
but yeah, I'll completely leave that up to you as to whether
They could be a water mains.
Water mains there. Oh, it could be.
Yeah, in the, yeah.
In the. Well, that would be. That'd be the gutter, wouldn't it?
yes, that'd be the gutter.
Yeah. So that would be the
That's-
street water main.
Yeah. So that's what's typically done. Typically, what you do is you have two lines 150 millimeters apart to show your gutter. And then when you do have your two lines 150 millimeters apart to show your gutter, then you can put in angled lines to show your driveway cutting through that gutter. So that makes it easy for you to delineate that. So on your site analysis plan, I'll accept either a mock-up of trees as they exist and put them all in there, or trees that you were given on your Revit plan. You can go, this is the reality, or this is the reality. I'm fine with accepting either of those. Fence. So once a fence has been decided upon, is there any issues in getting fences in? Also,
It depends because you said to me that you want a 1.2 metre high fence at the front.
yeah,
With timber. Well, the minimum height for the side fences is 1.8.
yeah,
So you'll end up with a.
The front is 1.2 though, maximum height.
So
of
you're
the
going to have to go
front
to the
is 1.2.
council and either
Yeah,
ask to be able
yeah.
to lower your side fences or raise your front fence.
yeah,
So,
yeah. And what I'm saying today as the client, and you have to excuse me, I'm getting my head around everything and how that relates further down the line as well. What I'm saying today as a client is I want a 1.8 high fence from this breadth.
Yep.
Can we get that?
Yeah, so you will have
Can we do
to,
it?
basically you'd have to take that to your council and say, listen, my client wants 1.8, this matches the code for the side fences, and try to get around it that way.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really good thing to bring up with them. Say, it's a continuity of the side fences.
Yep.
Because otherwise, you say what we end up having is a very odd junction between 1.8, 1.2. What's happening there? And the council might say, oh well, look, you can grade that 1.8 down to the 1.2 at this particular angle starting back.
Would you be able to say to them, like, listen, we're getting rid of this heinous fence out the front, like, to try and get the point across, like, can you let us do this, you know?
The neighbour's fence is 1.8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually more than that. The neighbour's actually more than that because there's 1.8 on top of a stone wall.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's beyond that anyway.
Yeah. Without giving too much away. Yeah. So, what do you think we would be writing on this plan? What sort of things would we put on that plan?
The height of the trees, maybe.
Yeah.
Height of the fences.
Yeah, where the actual services are. Normally you'd probably put garden tap here, mark where the garden taps and things like that are, because that shows us where the water lines are under the ground too, because that's important to know. When you start digging up, like if we have to cut and fill the site,
Yeah.
if we don't know where the existing
Existing.
plumbing is going,
Yeah.
then that could be some problems. We could hit the water line and then we're going everywhere.
Yeah. So I think when it says that for services, that's talking about services that exist there. not typically what we're doing on site. Especially if we end up going for a larger plan, one is to 500, one is to 1,000. Now, yes, what you put on this plan will depend on how large a scale you're doing that plan, and it will depend on what detail you're doing.
Would you put the
Your easements in.
sewer
Yep.
line, the easement
Yes.
line? Yeah.
So I'd go putting that up. I'd be putting on water mains, on sewer mains, all of that infrastructure that's part of the broader area. So I'd be putting that on, and yes, I'd be labelling those. Label size and heights of trees. And yes, also labelling the adjoining dwelling. So just put in, number 172, number 176.
How would you
etc.
go by measuring the trees?
Just put estimates in here. So
Like large?
If you do Google, like if you put in the plan underneath,
Yeah.
you can actually see the trees, so you can probably just put one in over the top of it. And,
Yeah.
You know.
Within Google Earth, you've got a measuring tool. So you grab the ruler and you measure stuff. Within SA Map Viewer, you've also got a measuring tool. So it's in the little tools bit, and you can go in and measure. I'll just quickly shrink this down to show that because I've got it open. Close that. I'll go to satellite. Then
You're gonna have to make custom materials for each of those trees.
for the
Yeah, because
size of them.
if you put a tree in and come in, say, crabapple tree at 6 metres, you're going to have to go into its properties and change the height of it and everything, create another element sort of thing.
Yeah. So maybe the best approach to this is keep it simple.
Yeah.
You're given information in your Revit plan. This is what trees are existing. That might actually just be the simplest. Now, obviously, that's not
I
what
don't
you-
think they won't cast shadows either. So if you want to put all those trees in there and you want to put your shadow plan in there to get the shade from them, it won't pick up the trees
Right.
for shade. So
because of the way those trees behave in the program.
I'm not really sure why that
Yeah,
doesn't, but
why?
it does not. Well, you'd see these are all 3D images, and the shadows are on. All it does is pick up the house and the fences. It won't pick up the trees.
Okay.
Yeah, which is
I guess that's the other question that I have in regards to this site analysis plan. Are we showing what's existing as in the front fence? Are we leaving that in there, or are we removing
So
that?
there you go.
so
Because
with
that's going to have to be removed.
That's how your trees will look when you put them in, and you won't get shade
That's
off.
your apple trees.
Yeah. Well, that was what I did in placing my
matched them.
trees.
I
I
matched
just
them.
matched them up with the size
That's
of the
exactly what I did.
yeah, and it was the apple tree and
Yeah.
another shrub.
Yeah.
So
what we're not asked for here is a demolition plan. Now, a demolition plan, that's where you put in all the stuff as it exists and you show that it's being demolished. Beyond the demolition plan, you show what's going to be there after the construction work.
So we can remove those front
that's-
fences and not
so-
have to worry about them?
Yes, so you remove those and put in the fences that you were intending to
Okay.
put in.
oh, okay. Well,
Yeah,
my
and so-
thing was smashed.
What's that?
I said I drew them. I just used the little hammer and did them as demolished
All right, yeah. Well,
because I want to use the
Yeah.
existing footings that are there as well for the other. Because I want to do a double timber frame fence with like tontine in the middle of it to block noise.
Mhm.
So and then batten across the top of it. That's my plan. I'm going to talk to the
council about.
client. Yeah.
Yeah, the client, yeah. Look, I'm fine with you showing elements on there to be demolished and retained. That's also fine. Typically, you will do a separate demolition plan.
Yeah.
So
That's
you'll
what I
say,
actually thought that
this
was
is
missing.
yes, and I
Yeah.
think that's the bit with this. It's missing the apartments, but I'm not sure how to accent. But going back to our measuring, getting size of trees. So within your tools, you've got this little measuring thing, and I'm not sure. I've got characters for And I don't know why this computer set up in this fashion there. But within SMAP View, you've got several other tools like measure and area, and that one's add a marker. Someone called print. So you can add markers. Now I've only ever been able to add one marker at a time. That's a bit of a pity. I think it'd be really cool if there's a thing you could add several things. Anyhow, but
Is a marker like that little green thing?
yes, that little green marker. Yeah.
You can on the other property location browser. You can put multiple markers on there. I think.
Yeah. But yeah, so measure a line. Super simple. We want to get the width of this tree. Start here, get to there, double click. 12.9 meters.
Massive tree.
Mm-hmm.
That's our canopy width on that.
Brickwork. It's 3 bricks, so it's a massive tree.
That's
At least 2.5. It's at least 2.5 bricks, so it's at least 500.
They're beautiful, massive trees, but I don't know if I want one on my house.
Yeah.
There's a lot of problems. My mum and dad have got massive amounts of money getting trees removed.
Yes.
They're just so big they're ruining the house and.
Yeah. And I'll, if you don't mind me discussing what we discussed with you in regards to trees. So one I think very pertinent thing that Mary brought up in client consult and designer consult is saying, are we going to get an arborist report done on these trees to see if there's any issues? What we don't want is to have to remove trees once we've got a dwelling there, because it's far more expensive and difficult to do, and we don't want limbs and so on falling on top of buildings and stuff. You know, I think that's great, and I think that's exactly what you should be doing in that regard. But in terms of this subject, you know, I can't just go pull one of those out from somewhere specific to this, so I can't give that to you. Sorry, but I think it's a great thing to request, because you know definitely you think about those things before you go. Yeah.
I mean, personally, if it was my property, I'd want the trees. I'd want to retain the trees if they're healthy.
Yeah.
I'd want to keep them there because of the shade that they provide in the summer months.
But you want to know these things. You want to know, like, if we're going to be removing it, or if we're going to be taking off some limbs or something like that. You know, we want to know that before we put a house there, because it's so much easier to do that when there's not a house there. It costs you far less. Okay, so back to our requirements. So this site analysis plan, I'd be putting as little information on there in regards to, you know, I wouldn't be saying, well, I'd say something like colour-bond fence to etc. height, but mostly that sort of information, because that's going on your site plan, you minimise the amount of information that's going on here. You think about why you're producing that site analysis plan. That site analysis plan is to show you where services are, show you what Shepherds Hill Road is like, show you what the neighbouring buildings are like. Keep your commentary on those particular things. Stuff that relates to the building that you're going to be showing elsewhere, keep it off. So keep plans as simple as possible and try to replicate information as little as possible. So moving on then to site plan. So what sort of scale do you think we might be doing a site plan at?
1 to 200.
Yeah, I'd go 1 to 200. Typically, councils say they give you the option of 1 to 500, 1 to 200, and 1 to 100 for some small sites. But this sort of site, yeah, I think 1 to 200 is going to fit nicely on an A3 page.
That's right. Well, if you could, it depends on the size of the page, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because if you're working with bigger pages, 1 to 100 is fine.
Yes. Yeah. And so if you're working in A0 or A1, you can fit so much more information on there, and you can actually go chucking more stuff on your plans as well. So, you know, less stuff in the specification, more stuff on the plans, and it's always going to be like that. But typically, we're thinking about residential development. It's not a really high spec, large budget property. We're going to be doing A3 drawings.
Yeah. Oh, just because you're going to end up with a couple of tiny little schedules on an A3 piece of paper, whereas I would normally prefer to have my schedules on the floor plan, my door and window schedules, because that's where the doors and windows are tagged.
Yes, and that's
Otherwise, you know, you got to look there, and then you got to flip through the next few pages, find that.
and same. To keep all the stuff that you're referencing predominantly on that drawing, that the table for that on that same drawing, that's the best. And so because you're given these parameters by council of several different scales, use the one that works well for your paper size. And think about your paper size and go, we can fit that drawing at this scale on this piece of paper with all the bits we want. That'll be the approach. So, north indicator, vital. Make sure, now, on some drawings, you have true north, and then on some drawings you'll have project north as well. Typically, if we're now, don't know so much about Revit and how that works, but typically in AutoCAD it works far nicer to have your drawings oriented north-south for actually drawing, for offsetting, and for creating everything. And so even if your floor plan is not heading directly north, south, east, west, as it almost never is, you sit it up that way, and then you rotate your site plan, or your north arrow. But in your site plan, you might want to have that showing directly north. So in some instances, you'll choose to have a north arrow on your site plan, which doesn't exactly match the north arrow on your floor plans, etc.
Would you not want the site analysis plan to face true north as it requires shadows? So that's a very good reason as to why, so on that plan it would be, true north. But if your floor plan's not going to fit on a page well, or something like that, you can deviate from that, and you can also specify sometimes a project north as opposed to a direct north, and that also may be of assistance to you in referencing. So northern elevation, eastern elevation, etc. Even though they're not true, it might be northeast elevation, etc. Beyond that, yes, you on your site or locality plan, your north arrow might be different to your floor plan, but then from your floor plan on, your north arrow should be exactly the same on all of them. So that should not differ from there on. Can anybody think of what sort of drawings we would not have a north indicator on?
Your elevations.
Elevations.
And your
sections.
Details. Sections. Details.
Elevations, sections, details. No north. You typically won't have a north on your kitchen plan either, because your kitchen plan, if you've got to do one, or wet area layouts, etc., you're not going to have a north arrow on those plans either, because they reference part of a drawing which has already been drawn. So so contours probably not an issue with that, and dimensioned site setbacks not an issue with that. Here, well, they're saying north indicator accurately placed on plan. Don't take direction from Google Maps, so or wherever you want to get it from. We want to be showing site access and egress from side road, well, from roadside, and around the site. So work that out. All right. So that's our site plan. Anything else we might include on the site that you can think of for that, and think of for planning approval? This is all asks you for, but typically within our work.
Trees.
yeah, I'd include trees once again. I would also, or anything else. There's a few things I can think of. James, you got one you chuck on there? Not that I can think of it.
Yes, your easements.
Cool. Easements, yeah, definitely you put your easements on. Congo, anything you can think of that you also put on a site plan?
A house.
It's not mentioned there.
A house.
You put your house on there. Yeah. Yeah. Some other things I would do.
Would you put your boreholes on? Or would that be on the site analysis plan?
Depends, yeah, depends. If you're doing a separate site analysis plan, then you, also on the large one, no, you won't put your boreholes on the site analysis plan. That's at far too much detail for that. So your boreholes would either go on a separate plan called a cut and fill plan or contour plan.
Yep.
Or they'd go on your site plan. Depends how busy your site plan is getting.
Yep.
And also, with your site plan, typically a lot of your boreholes sit under your building footprint as well, and it depends what you're showing with your building footprint there. So it can get messy there. It all depends. But you'll have to have your boreholes somewhere. If you're not doing a cut and fill plan or a contour plan, you're going to have to include them on your site plan.
What about, because we're not doing a footy plan with it, what about soil type and stuff like that? As general notes.
Yeah, no, you don't include that. So with your drawings, you can include tables down the side, which might be part of a drawing or might be part of your title block, where you can include general notes. And yes, your soil type is something that you put in general notes specifically for any footings. But that's about the only time you'd use it. I guess if you had general notes that run through the whole thing, that's fine, you include that. And typically it can be really good to have general notes that run all the way through. One really good thing to have on general notes is wind speed, because it's not just at framing stage they need to know about wind speed, or also, but it's at, it needs to be on the floor plans for the types of windows, etc. So there's all these different trades that will want to know about your wind speed. And then also, what I've always done is have on a site plan, I'll have lot 1, deposit plan, etc., etc. Certificate of title this, local council this, site area this, and then some of those specifics, wind speed down under that, and bushfire attack level, 12.5, etc. So you have that on your site plan, but that can also be in general notes and go through all your other plans as well. Because now, typically things like wind speed and bushfire attack level several people want to know those. Even if it's the people doing your trusses, they'll want to know about both of those aspects. People doing your doors and windows will want to know about both of those aspects. Other stuff.
What about the cut and fill table?
Yeah, cut and fill one.
Yeah, so cut and fill line, yes, you'd put that on your site plan if you're not doing a separate cut and fill plan. So certainly. And so that the choice about whether to do a separate plan for that depends on whether your plan is getting too busy and if you can clearly show that on that site plan.
Where do we get information about how much fill you can do as opposed to cut? You know what I mean?
No, I don't.
Depends on the position of your house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, you can do in Revit. It will automatically produce.
It will.
The cut and fill. But you need to do every step.
Yeah, I did all that. I did all the topography.
Yeah.
I never enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's really hard.
Yeah, I've done the topography thing like 10 times.
Yeah.
Every time I finish it, and then half the information just
You need
disappears.
to pretty sure every contour line is correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can produce your cut and fill table.
Okay.
But in regards to how much cut and fill you're allowed to do on a certain site, well, that will come from the council. Yeah, I can't see it specified anywhere within the council zoning, but there are general notes around, this is what we want to avoid, this is etc. That will be possibly a discussion with your council, but that might come. Look, you want to have a preliminary discussion with council about that and have some idea of volumes of cut and fill and the resultant height of retaining walls. But then that will also go back to your engineer, and that might actually come up as a variation to your planning approval or your building rules consent as well, because that's also something that happens with any of this consent as well. We get initial consent, and we'll get building rules consent, and then we get some other things finalised, and we work out, that's actually going to be really expensive to do. We don't, once it's been to the engineer and stuff's been designed, we want to modify that. You can go back and seek an amendment with council over those things, and that can be really time consuming and be very annoying. But amendments do happen, and amendments once stuff is even in construction happen as well. God forbid if that does happen with you guys. I hope that certainly with simple projects that everything is planned right from the start before there's any soil dug. But it does happen that that they'll go, this thing doesn't fit in here as we designed it, and then you seek amendments from the council once things are underway as well. That also happens. So with your cut and fill, that might happen. So you get initial indications of council as to whether something's going to be possible, and if you don't like that initial indication, you can put together something to go to council. If you've got all this time to go, look, we're really looking at doing this. We can see neighbours have done that before. There's plenty of precedent for that. The engineering is there to enable this. If we can have a structural engineer design these retaining walls, etc., and a geotechnical engineer say that yes, the angle of proposal of this soil is this, etc., it should all be fine. Then, so it might be a little bit back and forth with council on that. So does that answer the question enough?
I just wasn't sure if there was somewhere in the Australian standards that tells you can only do so much fill. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because to get the compaction levels right, is there a maximum amount you can do?
Right. I don't know. I can't give you any specific answers on that. I think there are. So different soils behave differently, and so different soils need to be treated differently. And I can't think of what Australian standard relates to that. And maybe there aren't in Australian standards that relate directly to that, and that has to be a structural engineer question. I think that's probably the best thing is the structural engineer's question, unless we find an Australian standard that relates to that. But yes, different soils have different properties in regards to the angle of repose. Do you know what I mean? Does everybody know what I mean by angle of repose? So I've got a hillside like this, right? And I cut into it like that. So chop that bit out. Now let's say that's a sand hill. That will go like this. All that sand will just go. I'll cut through it. It might be wet, stays up there for a couple of minutes, and then it all comes down. If it's not sand, if that's clay, well then, a little bit's got to come off here and end up down there, but predominantly it's going to sit quite nicely until it gets waterlogged. Then it behaves differently. That's angle of repose. So you've got angle of repose for various different types of soil. That's part of what engineers look at in designing their retaining walls, because it dictates how much pressure, overturning pressure, is going to be on that retaining wall. Because with sand, you're going to have much more pressure on that retaining wall because its angle of repose is far shallower than clay. But as I said, that all changes when you add moisture, and that has to be part of your retaining wall design. Is that ag drain down the bottom, geotechnical or geotech fabric here, and aggregates on there to make sure all that water is moved away, so you can rely on that angle proposed that it doesn't turn to soup later on and provide lots of weight behind it. So, so each soil behaves differently in that regard with its angle proposed, but they also have different compaction qualities as well. If you're talking about compacting, and this is something I don't know much about in regards to natural soil and how you should treat that. And from the little bit that I have experienced in regards to this, engineers don't like natural soil or deposited stuff that they don't know about. So they like to put piers through the unknown and lock into something they do know. Beyond that, if you're going to be compacting stuff, use compactable rubble. So quarry rubble that's been dug out, crushed, and all mixed together with the right sort of constituents of fine aggregate and coarse aggregate to make something which will compact well. And then you typically compact that in 150 mil layers. So you lay 150 mil, compact it all, lay more, compact all that to get a solid bed. The whole thing of using natural soil and compacting that, I don't know much about that. I don't know to what extent we can draw on that.
You start to put retaining walls in on our job. That will change all the topography, won't it?
Yes, it will change.
You obviously have flat step blocks.
Yes. Yeah.
So how do you do that?
How do you do? I can do that for you, no worries. But you won't.
Just show
You
me
just
how
have to get rid of the contour lines and that are there. They won't be relevant.
Well, see, my contour lines have all disappeared anyway. This is the problem I've had. Every time I put them in, they just disappear.
They disappeared.
Link that file, relevant file.
I'll keep going on what sort of. Actually, I'll just pause the recording for a bit because you guys are working on good stuff. Press on and get back into this because I realise we've got.
Have you got? Show me your file system.
Alright, I'll give you guys another minute.
Sorry.
Alright, so that's our site plan. So the other things I'd add on the site plan, any carports, garages, I would add washing lines if you're going to do that sort of thing, rainwater tanks, and then what's happening with your stormwater. That's really important to council. Council want to know what's happening with your stormwater. They will want to know how much water you're retaining for CFS. So you'll on your site plan, if you're showing a tank, you'll say X many litres water retained, like dedicated water supply for firefighting as per Minister's Code or Minister's Specification 78. You will have those details on your site plan. You will also show your boundaries, the distance of those boundaries, and any angles. So somebody can look at that and they can basically set out an allotment from your plan. So include all of that information, and then you'll include information about, say, your front fence, and you'll say your front fence height, colour, etc. And you'll do that with a leader. And then that's the last time you'll get a chance to deal with that, because on your floor plans, etc., you won't. So anything that you can only deal with on a site plan, that's where on your site plan, that's where you write about it. Going onto your floor plan, you can start to get a little bit more detailed in regards to your construction. But what you should avoid doing is putting in too much specific information about, say, occupant choices. So we're concerned mostly with construction, so we'll want to know what wall type it is, what our materials are. But in fact, not even, you might say, no, in fact, no, let's not say timber stud walls, etc. That's going in your specification. But you'll indicate on there through your choice of walls what form of construction it is. You're probably not going to mention any of your cladding on there, because you can do that on your elevations, and you'll have to do that on your elevations. It's more relevant there. But what you will mention is floor coverings. What you may mention is floor coverings. You have the option of specifying your floor coverings on your floor plan or in your specification. You may mention that an oven is an underbench oven or a wall oven, etc. But what you're not going to do is mention that it's a Westinghouse SC30, etc. That goes in your specification. So all the stuff which is more specific to client choices and client budget, that's going in your specification. But things that relate to structural aspects and location of things must go in your floor plan. So that's why you would show a dashed line for where your underbench oven goes, or where your dishwasher goes, or where your washing machine goes, because it's talking about locations of things. But what we're not going to mention are paint colours, etc. Cornices, window treatments, all those sorts of things. So it'd be full dimensions. So you have overall dimensions, so showing how large the building is overall. Then wall openings. I think I can go through this fairly quickly. So your dimensions. You guys know how to do dimensions. You're fine with that. Window and door tags. So that's about specifying what window is what, numbering, etc. And wall construction. So as I said before, you'll show that by your patching. Typically, you won't specify a leader to say that this is what this wall is. There are exceptions to that, right? There are exceptions to everything. Sometimes you will want to put a leader in saying this is a Caulfield masonry wall to this section also, because that's about specific construction in locations. But if all of your building is 90 by 45 timber stud walls, that can be covered in your specification or in your wall framing plan. And then so probably windows, etc. Elevations. You start getting a little bit more information on your elevations once again. Oh, there's another thing that you would also put on your site plan, which I did mention earlier. Or site plan and or floor plan is downpipes. So you show the location of your downpipes on either one of those plans. The reason you would show your downpipes on your site plan is because it relates to where your plumbing goes for your stormwater. But you can also, if that's getting too busy on your site plan, you can just show dashed lines for your stormwater runs, and then with your floor plan, put in your downpipes on your floor plan to match up with those as well. So elevations, you'll also want to draw your downpipes in to show their location. You don't necessarily have to talk about them because they've already been mentioned in previous plans. What you will be talking about though is any wall finishes, roof finishes. You will include your call-outs, or what are they called? Your door and window tags. So you'll include those numbers on your doors and windows to identify which door and window it is. You'll also put on your roof pitch. So you'll show roof pitch. You'll show any heights that relate, so any dimensions that relate to verticality. So you'll show the slope of your land. You'll show your finished floor level. So you'll show natural ground level if it's flat in an elevation. You'll show window head height. You'll show apex height as a minimum. You might also put in finished ceiling level as well on your elevations. That's pretty much all. Oh, yeah. That's all you're going to include in your elevations. Section, that's your option to put some things in a vertical sense that you can't see in elevation. So things like insulation, you can only see that in section, you can't see that in elevation. Also, in your section, you can see plumbing. You can see plumbing runs in plan view, but you can't see plumbing slopes in plan view. That sort of information can only be conveyed in a section. Set downs can be indicated in plan, but they can be seen visually in a section. So that might be something you want to show. Slopes for a screed, for a tile floor, you can only show that in sections. So that might be something that you choose to show. The makeup and interaction of cupboards and built-in furniture is something you can't show in plan view, but it's something that you can show in sections. So when you go doing a section, it's for those reasons, to show those things that you can't see in plan view. Anything else anybody can think of, you can see in section, but you can't see in plan view.
Just like your skirtings, cornices,
Yep.
ceilings,
Yep. Skirtings, cornices, ceilings. Yep. And whether a ceiling's battened out or
eaves, battens,
Yep. Yep.
everything. Tiles, floor coverings.
Yep. Yep. Typically you won't include your floor coverings and tiles.
Oh,
and
you'll
things.
see it in this one because she's put tiles in there.
Yeah, right. Okay,
So when
she's done that to that detail.
When you do, put your section where it says put your section through, you
Yeah.
will see the tiles. But you can just hide them if you don't want to.
Yeah, because the approach to this is you just drag a line and it makes a section for you.
Yeah.
Which is different to AutoCAD, whereas where you go at 1:50, I'm not showing tiles. At 1:10, I am showing tiles.
Yeah.
So it's, right. You also air conditioning ductwork and how that interacts with trusses and joists and things like that. You can only show in section. You can't show in plan view. So you're identifying materials and so on a lot more in your section than you are in your other drawings, because you're seeing more of those materials.
Are we getting another meeting with the client so we can talk about stuff like that? Or is that all going to be done via email?
There's not another meeting with the client.
Okay.
Yeah, not in the planning stage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that'll be more the building stage.
Yeah, I think so. I haven't gone through that yet, but I know there's not another one in the planning stage. So planning, we've only got another week or 2 weeks.
Sure.
So and that's and we've pretty much covered everything you need to know about the planning thing, and we're pretty much on top of that. It's the Revit stuff which is the problem, and so we're going to have to work with that and adjust expectations accordingly. So 3D views, 2 external views including site-proposed, 2 internal views including furniture. So the rest I think I don't. I'll just quickly run through it. Actually, no, I won't. So what I was planning to do was cover all the things that are required to be in each of those plans, clarify that, get you guys thinking about what notes am I putting on, what notes am I not putting on, what information am I putting where. Is everybody pretty happy with that? That rundown of what we would include on what plan and what sort of scale we'd be doing? Oh, what scale would we do a section to?
1 to 50.
Yeah, happy with that. And what scale would we do a floor plan to?
1 to 100.
Yeah. Cool.